go into the other physical books that I read, let me just talk quickly about the audiobooks that I read and the ebook that I managed to read this month. Well, in July. So, the first audiobook I listened to was The Wizards of Once Knock 3 Times by Cressida Cowell. This is the third book in the Wizard of Once series. This audiobook I gave a 3 stars. It is read by David Tennant, so beautiful. I could listen to his voice all day. It is a middle grade, and we basically have warriors and wizards on opposite sides. They're both enemies, yet these two kids that one from each side seem to be coming together to defeat an even bigger evil, which are the witches. And this story is just a continuation of the events that happened in book 1 and book 2. So it was really interesting. I will probably never purchase these books because I feel like they're very much the lower end of middle grade. So if I had a young child, these would be a great book to read to them for bedtime stories. But for me personally, it's not a book that I would want to read again or keep in my collection. The next audiobook I read was You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson, and I'm going to preface my star rating with the understanding that this book isn't my general taste. So this is not a book that I would generally enjoy much anyway. I read it because of the hype, because everyone was saying how wonderful and brilliant and amazing it was. It's about a teenage black girl who is at school. She's in her final year and she's getting ready and preparing her application for college, for university. But she's in America, so it's college over there. And she's been accepted into the college that she wants to go to. However, the funding that she was looking to get, the sponsorship that she was looking to get, has fallen through. So now she can't afford to go. And instead of telling her grandparents, because she thinks they'll just sell the house in order to get the money for her, she decides to enter the run to become prom queen. Because in her town, the prom is such a massive event for the community that there is actually a cash prize for the prom queen and prom king, which is surprisingly enough for her to go to college. I feel like it missed the mark for me in the discussion about racism, because there is one of her friends, the main character's friend. She makes a racist remark, but she claims that she's not a racist because she has a black friend, which is, you know, you can still be racist even though you have a black friend. But the discussion on it wasn't enough for me. Like, they didn't delve into it enough. So if you just take the basis of the story, this was a story about a girl running for prom so she could pay for college. And it was predictable. And the ending was no surprise at all. I could have told you that right at the beginning. I understand how this book can be important for a lot of people to see themselves in a book. People of colour, people of different sexuality. But for me, it was a story about a girl wanting to be prom queen, to get the prize money to go to college, and it wasn't a great story for me, so I gave it a 2-star. But that's my reasoning. I don't want to make the fact that the character was black and bisexual, I think she was, I don't want to make that the selling point of the story. So yeah, it was a 2-star for me. The ebook that I read was called Finn, which was from the Anderson Billionaire series by Melody Ann, and it was simply a romance novel. It was a smutty romance novel, and I loved it. It was amazing. I gave it 3 stars. I mean, I can't really give them anything higher than that because they're not great literature, are they? But it was really, really fun and something that I kind of needed as well. It gave me a little bit of a spark mid-month. So yeah, that was that one. So let's move on to the physical books that I read. So I read The Burning by Laura Bates. This is a story very, very similar, I want to say, to The Exact Opposite of OK, which I read last year by Laura Stevens. We have a young girl starting a school in Scotland, here in Britain, and she's just moved there and she's running away from her past. And what we discover is that some nude pictures of her got leaked and her old school all found out and was slut shaming her. So her mother has moved her away from where they used to live and moved them to Scotland for a fresh new start. And unfortunately, her new school friends and her new school gets wind of this and it all starts up again. Meanwhile, our main character, who's called Anna, is sort of researching a story about a young girl who was around in the 1700s and who was raped by a lord or a lord's son, and she then raised her child on her own. However, she was then claimed to be a witch and she was burnt at the stake, and she's discovering this. And I think that what the author Laura Bates is trying to say is that we have been targeting women and slut shaming women for centuries. Isn't it about time we get over it? You know, granted, we don't burn our young girls at the stake anymore, but how we treat them is just as bad. Like, we shouldn't be doing this anymore. You know, we shouldn't be treating our young girls like this. So I found this a really, really interesting story. I really, really enjoyed it. I gave this a 4 stars. It doesn't quite beat The Exact Opposite of OK for me. I still think that one is just such a good book. I love it. But I would definitely put this side by side to The Exact Opposite of OK and recommend both of those books, The Exact Opposite of OK and The Burning. I would recommend these to teenage girls to read, to understand that slut shaming and bullying other people is wrong and shameful and shouldn't be done anymore. We should be over this. Like, it's been centuries now. Can we stop? So yes, that was that one. The next book I read was the final book in the Evernight series by Claudia Gray. This one is Afterlife. You can see it there. Yeah, there we go. It's a bit of a flashy kind of cover. I love this. I love this series. Stupidly, I donated the first book and gave it to charity before I'd finished the series. I've learnt my lesson since, and I don't donate the books until I finish the series now, and then I decide what I'm going to do with the series. Because now I need to go and find the first book again, because I absolutely love this series. This series is about a girl who is a vampire who falls in love with a boy who is a human, and I love it. It's brilliant. I want to find more books like this, and I think The Vampire Academy by Rochelle Mead. I've since watched the movie, recently watched the movie, and I'm thinking, I definitely need to read that series, which is dangerous because there's about 6 or 7 books in that series. So yeah, highly recommend if you like a good vampire story. This is really, really good. I really enjoyed the whole series. I'm just on the hunt for the first book again because I need to find it again. And the most annoying thing is the second book that I own is in paperback, but the third and the fourth book that I own are in hardback. C'est la vie. So yes, and the first book that I donated was also a paperback. So I don't know, I might see if I can get them all in hardback, and then they'll at least match. But yeah, great series, and I would love to reread this again in the future. And I gave this a 4 stars. The next book I read was a graphic novel, or a manga shall I say, and this was Assassination Classroom, which is book 1. I was gifted these by Charlotte from Planet Lottie, so thank you very much, Charlotte. I have read the first one, and this was brilliant. Like, we have this really strange alien. I'll show you. This really strange alien. And he has destroyed half of the moon and now threatens to do the same to the Earth unless the humans can kill him. So he has said that he will teach this classroom of misfits at the school, and they have to try and kill him. And if they can do that, then he won't destroy the Earth. They come up with all sorts of ways to do this, and they don't succeed very often. I have the first 10 books in this series. I cannot wait to move on to the next one. I gave this one a 4 stars. Thoroughly enjoyed it. It was funny. It was brilliant. I love it. It makes me smile. It really does. I love them. So thank you very much, Charlotte, for gifting me these, because I love them. I love them so much. Quickly becoming my second favourite to Death Note. The next book I read was the final book in the Magisterium series, which was The Golden Tower by Holly Black and Cassandra Clare. I was buddy reading this series with Charlotte from Planet Lottie as well. And this was the finale, and it was good. I really enjoyed it. I gave this a 4 stars. Morning, Dylan. Yeah, I can't even remember what happened, to be fair. I'm going to have to reread this series again sometime. But yeah, this was just a continuation and the final, the end of the series. And I really did enjoy it. I really did. I thought this was really good. We had a big bad enemy to defeat, and I thought that was great. Yeah, I would definitely reread this series again in the future and really delve into it. It's an easy read. The books are short, so I could even binge read the series over like a weekend or something in the future, when I'm in a mood to read. So yeah, might do that as a challenge in the future, to reread these over a weekend, because it's 5 books. So I think it works out about 1,200, maybe 1,500 pages. So yeah, easy read over the weekend. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you very much, Charlotte, for buddy reading that with me. The next book I read was, well, technically I listened to this on audiobook. So this was down as one of my audiobooks that I listened to. I listened to it on BorrowBox, which is my library's audiobook app. And yeah, I listened to the audiobook of it and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I went and purchased my own copy. So this is A History of Britain in 21 Women by Jenny Murray. And this literally is chapter by chapter about women in Britain who have changed the course of history, I suppose. So we have women such as Boudicca, or Boudica, however you pronounce it, Queen Elizabeth I, Mary Wollstonecraft, Jane Austen, Mary Seacole, Ada Lovelace, Emmeline Pankhurst, Nancy Astor, Margaret Thatcher, although some people might not like her, and Nicola Sturgeon. So they're just a few of the women in this book. I thought this was amazing. I definitely want to go back through it, tag it, really sort of study this book. I want to really like delve into this book, take my time with this book again in the future, and really glean the information from it. And I actually love this book so much that I bought the second book as well, which is A History of the World in 21 Women by Jenny Murray. Actually, slight confession on that. I actually picked up the History of the World one first because I thought that was the book that I'd listened to. Then I got home, realised it wasn't, so then had to go out and buy this one. So technically, I bought the second book first and then had to go back and purchase this one. So, but I don't mind. I am going to enjoy reading the second book just as much as I enjoyed reading the first one because I found them very interesting. So yeah, very good. 4 stars. The next book I read was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J Maas. This is the second book to Court of Thorns and Roses, which is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. I know a lot of people prefer this book to the first, and I'm going to be controversial and say I like the first one better. See, in the first book, we are introduced to a character called Rysand, and he is this really bad guy that Tamlin and Lucian fear. He literally puts the fear in them. Like, they are quaking in their boots. And then in this book, we're not anymore. And I just felt robbed, I think. I felt robbed of my bad guy. And I didn't like that. So yeah, I know Sarah J Maas likes to get us to fall in love with characters and then completely change our opinions on them later on in the books. She did that in Throne of Glass. You like a certain character, you really like a certain relationship that's forming, and then she goes, ha ha, fooled you, here's who you're really gonna love. But I didn't fall in love with Rysand. I didn't. I'm sorry. I like him, but I'm not in love with him yet. And I know that a lot of people love Rysand. Like, they are mad for him. And I'm not. He's not. So, I'm still for Lucian. I love Lucian. I'm now on to book 3. I'm actually just started it yesterday. And I have Lucian back in the story. So, yeah, we'll see. I gave this one 4 stars, so I still enjoyed it. It's not a bad book. I still enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, but just didn't quite beat Court of Thorns and Roses for me. So that's that one. The next book I read is the book that I did show in my July TBR because I mistakenly put this into my readathon and then realised that I'd broken my own rules, and that was The Court of Miracles by Kester Grant. And this is a reimagining, a reimagining of Les Miserables. So instead of the story that we know and love, this is like an alternative story to it. Here we have Eponine, whose sister is sold to the Guild of Flesh, which is part of the Court of Miracles. We have different guilds in the underworld of Paris in France. And her Eponine's sister, as I say, sold to the Guild of Flesh. Eponine hates that, wants to save her sister, and basically spends the rest of the book trying to do exactly that. I really enjoyed this. I did. I really enjoyed it. I think we're getting another story in this because it did. I don't think it's a standalone. But yeah, I did like some of the nods to the original story. Like we have a couple of names that we know and love from the original story. But the story, it was different. It was, yeah, that's all I can say really is this is just Eponine's story where she's the hero, I suppose, in a sense. She's this amazing thief and yeah, she ends up being part of the rebellion. So yes, very, very good story. I really enjoyed it. I do recommend it. This is the Waterstone Special Edition and I gave this 4 stars as well. The next book I thoroughly enjoyed, and that is The Five, The Untold Lives of the Women Killed by Jack the Ripper by Hallie Rubenhold. This was really interesting. So here we have a story that is linked to Jack the Ripper because obviously this is the story of the victims of Jack the Ripper. But if you want information about the crimes or who Jack the Ripper might be, this is not the book that's going to tell you that. This book isn't interested in Jack the Ripper. This book is highlighting his victims. Because there's so many books out there that are like, Jack the Ripper was this person, Jack the Ripper was that person, and all sorts of theories, conspiracy theories and imaginings and all sorts of things like that. But I bet most of you cannot name any of his victims. And I was exactly like that. I know the name Jack the Ripper, but I didn't have a clue who his victims were. And this book puts that to rights. This book goes through chapter by chapter with each woman telling you their life story, basically, where they came from, where they grew up, who they married, why they were on the streets the night that they were murdered. And yes, a lot of the stories are quite repetitive because unfortunately a lot of these women were alcoholics. So there seems to be a similar thread through every story. But one of the women was Polish. One of the women was possibly Irish. And yeah, and we generally think of them as prostitutes. That's the only thing we kind of know about the victims of Jack the Ripper. But this book actually shows us that there wasn't actual evidence to say that they were prostitutes apart from one of the women. Only one of the women was a known prostitute. The other 4 were not known. There was no evidence that they were actually prostitutes. They just happened to be living on the streets at the time of their murder. So yes, I found this really interesting. This is again another one of those non-fiction books that I want to take my time over again in the future and just really pull out all that information, go through it with my tab notes and really like study this and get all the information. I think we should focus more on the victims rather than the perpetrator of crimes. More and more I want to know about the victims more. So yes, really enjoyed this and I gave this 5 stars. And the last book that I read for the month was my graphic novel again, and this was School Live, and this was number 5. I haven't read 1 to 4, but I got this for £1, I think, in a charity shop, and I just grabbed it thinking I would try and find 1 to 4 later. Never have. But this was interesting. We have a group of girls. I think they're girls. They look like they're all girls. And they are stuck in the school. And outside are zombies. And So it's kind of like them trying to survive a zombie apocalypse. It was really good fun. I would like to see if I could find books 1 to 4, because I think this would be a really good manga to read, to find out why they are zombies outside, and why this girl here has a patch on her eye. That would be interesting to find out too. So yeah, it was really good, really interesting, really enjoyed it, and I gave this one a 3 stars. I gave it 3 because I didn't really have any context, because I just read this one in the middle. So yeah, that was my fault really, but it was really good, really interesting, really enjoyed it. 3 stars. So that is it. That is all the books that I read in July. I have waffled on for God knows how long. My throat is sore. Can hear me croaking up, and my camera's shut off twice, so I do apologise for the editing on that. I'm going to have a lot of editing to do to try and cut this down so it's not 3 hours long. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!